If you see from a US perspective, since a long time, they're exporting goods as well as importing goods. But their duties or tariffs on what they export versus what they import, are very different.
Sir, this Trump administration reciprocal tariff imposed by them, will your company and how much companies will impact by this?
Smaller economies definitely will be impacted more versus the larger economies, simply because the bargaining power of these economies are much lesser versus the larger economies.
Sir, do you see a slowdown in global economic growth with this?
Rules will get redefined to a large extent, but I think the key aspect is flexibility and adaptability.
Do you think we are heading towards World War III? Namaskar दोस्तों, welcome back to our new episode. This time we have hot hit topic. I think पूरे विश्व में इसी की बात हो रही है. Trade tariffs and tensions imposed by the Trump administration. और इसको डिस्कस करने के लिए आज हमारे साथ है CMA हार्दिक दीवानजी सर, जो CFO है Xylem वाटर सॉल्यूशंस कंपनी के, विच इज़ USA बेस्ड. सो ये रेसिप्रोकल टैरिफ बड़ौदा में सबसे बेहतर तरीके से वो समझा पाएंगे, क्योंकि उनकी कंपनी एक US बेस्ड है और वो बड़ौदा से काम भी करते हैं. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वेलकम सर, वेलकम टू फिनव्यू सर्विसेज प्राइवेट लिमिटेड, एंड थैंक यू हमारा न्योता एक्सेप्ट करने के लिए.
It's my pleasure, Mohit.
Great, sir. So, we all know that trade tariff, reciprocal tariff, Trump administration is imposed. So, you are the better person to explain why such huge step has been taken by the Trump administration.
Mohit, if you see from a US perspective, since a long time, they are seeing that they're exporting goods as well as importing goods. But their duties or tariffs on what they export versus what they import, are very different. From their perspective, they're saying they should be equal. जितना मैं exports पे tariffs और duty दे रहा हूँ, imports पे ही उतना मेरा duty और tariff होना चाहिए. That is their perspective, and basis that rationale, they have imposed these tariffs.
But due to imposition of such tariffs, is there was any discussion, because you are the part of the USA companies, there was any discussion or some kind of talks this is going to happen before such thing?
Honestly, nobody predicted this kind of a step, and again, the magnitude of its impact, more importantly. Pre-election agenda has always been, that we want to build in America for America and other things. But the impact that we are right now seeing, and it changes almost every day, right? Right now, it's pushed back by 90 days for all other regions other than China, but China itself is such a big impact because almost, the numbers say about 40% of the imports of US come from China. So I don't think this magnitude or this kind of an impact was something which was ever seen by anybody coming until it really came into effect.
Sir, this Trump administration reciprocal tariff imposed by them, will your company and how much companies will impact by this?
Mohit, I would say a lot of companies, be it US based, non-US based, which have imports and exports, are going to be impacted. Right? The question here is how much, and the magnitude depends on how much of that is imports and exports based. At this juncture, it is very difficult to quantify the exact impact, but let's just give one example. iPhones. It's estimated about 80% of the total production of iPhones still happens in China, which we'll see with the kind of duty impacts in US is going to be impacted. It may mean opportunities for countries like India. We do about 14% of total exports of iPhones. We'll see a shift there. But yeah, this is just one specific example. Coming to Xylem, we do have several factories. We have consolidated and are, being a global company, are selling to US and other regions. We will also see an impact arising out of this, uh, you know, reciprocal tariffs that have come into picture. The short answer is it's going to be yes, and this is going to have an impact on the larger economy as a whole as well.
So you talked about supply chain, global supply chain disruption, basically. So do you think, sir, के free trade economy, this is the end of the free trade economy or beginning of the end of the free trade economy?
Well, it's too early to say that. I don't think free trade is disappearing, but the rules are definitely being redefined. From a completely globally free trade economy, we are seeing more and more regional based structure. Uh, and it's not just with reference to the tariffs now. This has intensified, but regions have talked about it in the past, be it US, when they've been talking about Baba, let's talk about India. We do have incentives for Make in India, so on and so forth, right? So the rules are being redefined, and we have to see how this evolves over the next few months and years. Uh, but definitely, I think this is reshaping, the way over the last few decades we have seen, the global economy.
Smaller economic countries, there are many smaller economic countries like Singapore, I would say Indonesia, Mexico, or developing countries. Will how much? Obviously, they will go impacted by this, but how much? Do you think, sir, their growth will impact it? Smaller economics.
These smaller economies definitely will be impacted more versus the larger economies, simply because the bargaining power of these economies are much lesser versus the larger economies. And the economies who have who are solely dependent on imports and exports will be more exposed uh, due to these tariff war that is going on. Again, as I said, we'll have to see how it evolves. We've just seen on 9th April, other than China, the impact has been, I would say, relatively limited. But it definitely adds a lot of uncertainty amongst these economies because of their limited bargaining power.
Sir, fundamental question. Every as we are on the platform for wealth management and financial planning, so investments will invest. Do you think investments will suffer in India or and even in global countries too? Investments and investors both.
The answer is yes, the short answer. And the reason to that is whenever there is uncertainty, you typically see hold back on the investments until certainty or relative certainty comes back. Um, the global markets are going to see that. There are a lot of companies who are right now talking about holding uncommitted investments that are there. See how this period evolves and then make commitments to these investments. When you talk about India, um, India is a country which is more resilient because it has a lot of, population, and it's a consumption driven economy. So the impact as far as India is concerned, I would say for sure will be there, but will be lesser than what you would see in most of the other economies.
Okay, means for Indian investors, yes, there is impact, but with sir says, according to the sir, it is a lesser impact compared to the other economics. So, which is a great news, a great thing, I would say. Sir, how your company financials will impact by this? Because this answer will get to us clarity how the USA companies financials will get impacted a little bit.
Well, I think these tariffs are going to impact, Xylem. It's very difficult to lay down one model. We are modeling different scenarios depending on the tariffs that are there and the impacts that it will have. Um, Typically, two types of impacts right now, where we have, in US maximum imports, um, because the 10% for exports, the 10% duty, where the duty was either nil or very less, so the incremental impact comes up. And for sure, the impact on imports or exports between US and China, right, is going to be impacted. It's so dynamic, it's very difficult to quantify at this juncture how much it will be. But for sure, there is an impact that we are seeing because we were importing and exporting goods across the world. We had pockets of, factories which were manufacturing for the globe. US was no exception. We were importing and exporting there. So we are seeing that impact. But it'll be very difficult to quantify. When you talk about companies in general, as I said, uh, where they were globally diversified, they are going to be seeing this impact because of the way it's moving a little more towards the regional based structure.
So yes, there will be impact, but it cannot be quantified now.
Very difficult. We are laying down scenarios. Almost every day the situation is changing, but we are laying down scenarios. For now, I think the good thing we are seeing is, other than China, it's pushed back by 90 days, so we have time to kind of really work through this and lay down the scenarios.
Sir, do you see a slowdown in global economic growth with this? Because if the global companies are thinking so much day in, day out about this reciprocal tariff. So do you think global economics will slow down?
Mohit, it is very evident, that whenever we see, you asked a previous question about slowing down investments, and the answer to that seems almost yes, right? Which effectively means we will see investments getting curtailed. We will see, the circulation of money also getting, I would say, curtailed. People would want to not spend as much as they would have done in the normal circumstances. Effectively, all of this, is possibly leading to slowdown of the global economy, and no country will be an exception to that. Some will be impacted more, some will be impacted less. So this definitely seems, unless obviously there is a complete rollback that happens at this juncture, it definitely seems that the global economy will slow down. In fact, it is told even for India, the GDP, a lot of the economists have forecasted about half to 1% toning down versus what they would have done, a couple of months ago.
So this USA putting reciprocal tariffs. So for self-interest, obviously they say America to America. We are here for Americans. The reasons what uh, Trump administration is giving. Do you think this self-interest prioritization will increase? Will other countries will be doing such things also? Maybe China has already started. Self-interest means country first, then the global.
Well, I think those rules will get redefined to a large extent, um, because one is US has done it, but there are other specific pockets or regions who are thinking on similar lines. At this juncture, this is more versus the US, but then it is, you can't predict that it's going to stop at that juncture, right? Europe is coming together, and they were also planning to do that, reciprocal tariffs versus the US. You mentioned about China, they're already doing it. There are certain other pockets who will do it. So the regions or the investments, when you talk about in future, people will think, how much is for the specific country and how much is going to be the exports. So they are going to balance it out for any specific investments. And this aspect will always be in the picture, at least in the short run, until the situation stabilizes for any investment that are going to come up.
So I would rather say, sir, any message to our viewers about how they should uh, plan out about their investment strategies or companies which are multinational companies, or there are several companies across the regions, multinational companies, they should focus, or they should wait, or how they should strategize themselves? Individuals you have already spoken about, but companies too. What would be your message to the companies, multinational companies, uh, as far as on the basis of the xylem is concerned, how the xylem is doing?
But I think the key aspect is flexibility and adaptability. So you if you're more flexible and able to adjust to the changing times faster, that is going to be a very very important aspect, right? Be it in investments, be it in any other area, so that you are able to adapt to how the global situation moves. And I think that's going to be an important aspect. Nobody want to keep, no company should be keeping their all their eggs in one basket, right? Try to diversify as much as possible. So these, in my view, will be the two key mantra, flexibility and adaptability, as well as not having all your eggs in one basket, from a futuristic standpoint.
Okay. Any message for the US administration, Trump administration, from your side?
Well, I think the key is not, trying to redefine the rules which have been set by the, well, let's say the WTO and others in a very rampant manner, and trying to have a one global free economy, which is, positive for all the regions, is going to be vital. So no sporadic moves is what I would say will be vital, so that people are able to work in a, non what should I say, not worried about what's going to come next, which is currently happening.
Sir, in 1930s, this tariff war was started. Previously, if we look into the history, and it was followed by World War II. So now again, this is just a hint that tariff war is started. Do you think we are uh, heading towards World War III?
It's a very extreme thing to say, Mohit, but at the same time, you never know. You cannot rule out, what's how this is going to translate. As you rightly mentioned, even 1930s, one of the key reasons was also these, sporadic movements in the global economy. It starts with this. It's a question of, how much more you want to aggravate. If this continues between various regions, countries, it could go there. We cannot say it will or it will not. It's very difficult for anybody to predict, for that matter. But at the same time, I think if everybody works in a cooperative manner, keeping the larger global interest of their countries as well as people in mind, right, and come to a mutually, I would say, mutual consensus on how to operate, we can avoid this. But it's definitely a lot of uncertainties right now, which is leading to, people's also being very volatile about what's going to happen next.
Sir, according to you, because you are closely studying all these things and you are involved, according to you, how should again, this is the reason, one of the reason is improving the balance sheet and PNL of the America. This is one of the reason that trade tariffs has been imposed. So according to you, how this should be done, or what steps can be done to improve the main PNL or balance sheet of the US? What is one of the motive that behind the for the US, for the Trump administration?
Well, I think there needs to be a balance that needs to be struck, right, in terms of creation of jobs within US, which is one of the agendas, but at the same time, not in an extremist manner by imposing so many duties, which is only going to result in increase in cost, for even in US, because US still imports a lot of items across the globe, so needs to be done in a very consensus manner, uh, instead of these sporadic moves, which just helps drive competitive advantage within the US for the US team, but at the same time, not so steep increases that are there. So they need to strike a balance around it, create jobs, which just helps in US. But then the key is it's a free economy globally. And if you are trying to make US people buy from US by being disadvantaged due to tariffs, it's going to be a short run game where they will see the gain. Thereafter, they're not going to be competitive. So the long term needs to be kept in mind while the decision is being taken, rather than the short run that, yeah, by doing this, we'll have jobs getting created. But at the end of the day, if the goods are so costly and you're not competitive enough from a global standpoint, the pinch is going to be felt by the people of the US itself. So it's not an easy answer. At the same time, I don't think you can change things overnight and try to make things movements in the P&L balance sheet of any company for that matter, or an economy doesn't happen overnight. India has taken, let's say, last 10 years to drive this change. So it needs to be done in a very, very stable manner by giving more stability, clarity, and not sporadic moves to the economy.
As far we understood about how the US economy would be post tariff, do you think, sir, maybe this 3 months are after 3 months, maybe some tariff rates can be reduced or whatever can be done? Do you think USA is post 3 months, post 90 days? Do you think USA is going to into recession because the increase price of the, obviously you mentioned that prices of the goods, if we produced in America, will have higher prices than the global trade, than what the goods are traded at the globally. So do you think that the USA may end up in the recession in the future?
So Mohit, I think you asked a very good question. The inflation over the last few years, especially post COVID, is definitely concerning, not just in US but across the globe. But this impact, you know, of the increasing tariffs is going to be, I think, significantly there if what's currently levied continues, and we do see, the impact of that, because recession is not just about levying tariffs, right? We see the circulation of money getting curtailed because the investments will get curtailed. With that, plus the spiraling costs, there is high likelihood, that the fears of recession are going to be there. We need to remember, there's not been any such cycle, and it's always a cycle, right? The last we had was 2008, so it's been a long cycle, and there are all the factors that we see right now, likelihood of a recession coming up. And mind you, it cannot be restricted only to US. This is going to impact across the globe. US still is the largest GDP in the world, so it's not going to be across, not just in US, but across the globe. Again, it will be different for different countries. May not be recession across the globe, but slowdown in the growth could also be seen, including in countries like India.
So thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your views. I think the audience would have gotten clear and crystal things what they have to do, and what investors have to do. They have to just remain hold tight their investments, remain adaptable, remain flexible, and accept the things how it comes step by step, rather than just being a reactive or being futuristic or being predicting. Don't get carried away by that. So once again, thank you, Hardik sir, for sharing your thoughts and accepting our invitation too. For
It's my pleasure.
thank you, sir.